Okay, we'll get going, I think. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, What Goes into a Social Media Strategy. My name is Nicola Barratt, and I'm a tech champion for social media here at the Digital Culture Network. I am a 40-year-old white woman. I've got long reddish-brown hair, and I'm wearing a leopard print top. I'd also like to introduce you to Katie, who's going to be managing the chat and the Q&A function today. Do you want to say hi, Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie, another tech champion for social media. I'm a white woman in her late 30s with mid-length red and blonde hair, and I'm wearing a black and white stripy top and pink earrings.
Okay, so just before we get going, there's a little bit of housekeeping to go through. Today's webinar is scheduled to last an hour, and that includes a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions for the Q&A, please do put them into the Q&A part of the chat. You can click on the CC button and we will have closed captions. They're going to be automated at the moment. We're hoping that we'll have the captioner on shortly and then there'll be proper captions. There is BSL interpretation available, and thank you to Alice and to BB for being here today. And the webinar is being recorded. It's going to be available on our website within the next 7 days. And it will also be sent out to you as well, along with a template, which I'll come on to. So please do say hi in the chat if you haven't already, and use that Q&A button for any questions that you have. Okay, just in case you haven't heard of the Digital Culture Network before now, we are a free service. We're available to everyone in England in the creative and cultural sector. We are a part of Arts Council England, and our job is to grow the digital skills of the sector. We have 13 tech champions and we cover a really wide range of digital marketing. So all of your marketing channels, social media, your website, accessibility, surveying your audience, and lots more. And we do that by providing free one-to-one support. You can find this if you go to our website, and Katie will pop the link to the website into the chat, just in case you haven't found us that way already. And you can click on Get in Touch, and then you can book in for a chat with us. So this is what we're going to look at today: why you might not have a strategy for your social media, why you need a social media strategy, essential elements of a social media strategy, how to measure your success, and then we will have the Q&A. But first up, what is a social media strategy? So strategy is basically just a fancy word for a plan, and a social media strategy is your plan for how you're going to use social media, written down for everyone to refer to, and this is particularly relevant if you're at an organisation, for other people to look at what you're working on. So this is what we don't want to make. I don't want you to end up with a 100-page document that nobody ever looks at, and that's a nightmare for you to update. No strategy is going to be set in stone, but particularly not a social media one, because the platforms change all the time. There are new platforms springing up. So we want it to be something that you can edit and that you can adjust as you go. So we're not after this. What we're going to do is we're going to look at a short 2 to 3 page strategy, and I'm going to be providing you with a template afterwards, which you can use. Now, if when you're listening to this, you're thinking, I wanted something a bit bigger than this, then what you can do is you can always get in touch with myself or with Katie, and we'll come on to how you can do that, and we can go through with you if there are more elements you wanted to bring into it. Okay, so this is the template I'm going to send out when you get a copy of the webinar. You can see it's a 2-page strategy at the moment, but when you filled it in, it probably is going to go over onto 3 pages. But these are the sections we're going to look through today. Now, one thing before we get started, I would really recommend, and I'm going to mention this a lot, that you have a research document separate to this, but alongside it, and you're going to link out to that from the last box, okay? And in your research document, you're going to pop in any data you gather or any information you gather. So if you take a screenshot of a really useful post that's done well, you're going to put that into your research document. It's basically so you have everything all in one place, and then if later on you're looking at it and thinking, why did I come to that conclusion? You've got all of the information there, okay? Is this how anybody else feels about writing a strategy? Writing a strategy can be quite scary because it's justifying what you're doing on social media. And if you're in a team, it's showing the rest of them or the rest of the organization what you're doing on social media, and they might then want to chip in on it. So it can feel quite overwhelming. We're going to try to make it as easy as possible today. So there's a couple of other reasons you might not have a strategy. One is you might be on your own, you might be an individual artist, or you might be on a one-person team at an organisation. And often then the strategy will just get pushed to the back of your to-do list. Or it might be about time. It might be that you're just responsively posting in the moment and you don't have the time to spend on defining what your strategy is. Sometimes if you're doing ticket sales as a priority, that's all you're posting about because that's what you need to be focusing on. And then the strategy gets pushed back further and further. And for a lot of you, your organization isn't going to have a digital marketing strategy. And if you don't have a digital marketing strategy, it's really hard for you to identify your objectives for your social media strategy. So if this is you or someone else you're working with who would be responsible for it, and you're thinking, we don't have a digital marketing strategy, there is someone at the DCN who can help with that. My colleague Ollie is an expert in digital marketing, and you could have a chat with him to plan an overarching strategy, so bigger than social media. And Katie has already popped a link into the chat for how you get in touch with Ollie. Okay, so why do you need a strategy? This is going to be a big list, but bear with me, we'll whistle through it, okay? A strategy is going to make your life a lot easier for the following reasons. It's going to help you to set social media goals that are going to make a difference. It's going to help you to identify and choose the right audiences and the right platforms. It will help you to stand out and to show what's unique about you. It will help you to deepen your relationships with your audience and to build on engagement and see what the audience is responding to and engaging with. It's going to help you to post consistently, and the platforms absolutely love consistency. That's one of the things that the algorithm is most keen on. It's going to help you to feel less like this on a regular basis. It will help you to drive revenue, to sell tickets, to sell items from your online shop. It will mean that you can track your return on investment and your performance. It will help you to manage your budgets if you're lucky enough to have some budget for promotion. It will help you to set expectations from others, so from others in your organisation, for instance, and to work with other teams in a more joined up way so that you have less surprise things handed to you to post on social media. And it's going to help you to set boundaries on what you can use your social media for. So who has had any of these said to them? So up top, we've got, here's a report for you to pop onto our socials, a random request for you to add a huge document, often a PDF, onto social media. Bonus points if you've never heard of this report before it's suddenly given to you and you're trying to skim it to see what on earth is going on. Or we have, my daughter uses, and then the name of a new social media platform. Why aren't we on there? So it's someone deciding that you should be on another platform without thinking about your capacity, your audience. Or I think we should be more like Duolingo. So someone asking why you're not doing posts more like an organization that you're actually nothing like. And also in the case of Duolingo, that has a lot more money and resources, I would bet. The problem is everybody uses social media, and so everybody thinks they're an expert on social media, and you can end up acting a bit like a gatekeeper to your social media accounts. So the idea behind a good strategy is that it's going to help you to fend off requests like this. And so you'll know this content isn't right for social media, and you'll be able to back it up to people to say, this is why we won't put that out. Okay, so this is going to be the biggest chunk of today's presentation, the essential elements of a strategy. Now, if you remember, this is our template that we're going to be using. And what we're going to do is we're going to look through each of these sections. So let's have a look around. So first up, we're going to be looking at your objectives. Then we'll be moving on to your brand identity, your resources, and your audience targeting, your choice of platforms, your competitor analysis, posting frequency, content calendar, content plans, your reporting, and then your data, evidence, and insights. So if we start off with your objectives, now when you're writing, when you're filling in this template, I would actually recommend you don't start with your objectives. And the reason is the rest of this template is going to help you to form your objectives. But for now, we're going to look at them and start off here because it makes most sense when you're looking at the document. Okay, so objectives are what you want to achieve with your social media. So these are some example of objectives, and these are not all of the objectives there are. These are just some you might want to think about. So we have brand awareness, topic awareness or education around a particular topic. So if you're a specialist in an area, that might be something you're looking to use it for. Driving revenue or sales, building on your partnerships, developing new ones, deepening your relationship with your existing audience, increasing memberships, getting more people signed up, or it might be a case of reaching new audiences. Now, like I say, these aren't all of the objectives there are. You might think, well, actually, ours is something else completely. I would recommend that you look at between 1 to 3 objectives. Any more than 3 is going to be too many, realistically, for your social media, unless you're a really big team, in which case maybe you might be able to. And it's also worth noting that objectives don't have to be growth. You don't have to be looking at significant growth. It could be that your objective is refining your online brand identity, or it could be that your objective is deepening a partnership that you already have. So it's not going to necessarily be like grow this by 50%. It can be different to that. It can be a bit more nuanced. So this is what the table looks like inside the objectives section, and this is what we would be filling in. So you can see our objective on the left, and I've put in an example one of raising awareness about your main, maybe it's your summer exhibition that you've got going on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to define our goals, and our goals are how we're going to show that we've met that objective. So with this, I've picked 2 goals to show that we've raised awareness. The first one is driving 8,000 video views across platforms. And the second one is increasing Instagram reach by 15%. So they're both awareness goals. You're going to choose at least 1 goal per objective. You can choose more than that if you would like, and particularly if you're going for a smaller number of objectives. Say you're only going for 1. You might want to pick 3 goals that show you've met it. If you're stuck for what you're going to be putting as the figures, so the 8,000 and the 15%, one thing I would very much recommend is that you look at your performance this year and you consider, are we going to be increasing budget? Is there going to be more time spent on social media? Do we have a new team member joining? So there's literally more resource around social media. If the answer is no, don't be too ambitious with your targets. Because if you say we're going to increase by 60% and then down the line you've not managed to do that, it's going to be unrealistic. It's going to mean that the strategy isn't that helpful. I would say smaller goals are going to be more achievable. The other thing to think about here, we've obviously got one section that's for time frame. So you're going to identify when you're doing the work. It might be a smaller time frame than what I've put in here. And also if you've got any budget. So in this case, I'm saying we've got £100 for paid ads, and that's going to help because we'll do some that are video ads, for instance. And maybe we'll do video ads on Instagram. So we're ticking off both of those goals with our budget. If this is difficult and you need some more support, just looking at this, myself and Katie, who is also on the call, we can help with this. So if you get in touch with us, we can talk about your objectives and what your goals are going to be. And Katie's already on it. She's put the link in the chat. Now, just briefly, I just want to explain that they need to be SMART goals. You might have heard of this before. And I've said the goals need to be as smart as this dog, because I'm pretty sure the dog is reading Russian, which seems pretty smart to me. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So an example of a non-SMART goal to begin with is we're going to sell lots of tickets on social media. Now, it's not specific because how many is lots? It's not measurable for the same reason. Is it attainable? It depends on how many you think a lot is. Now, if a lot is like 10,000, it's probably not attainable. Is it relevant? I don't even know which platforms we're selling on, so it may be completely irrelevant to that audience. And is it time bound? No, we didn't define the time span. So a SMART goal would be we're going to drive 1,000 link clicks from our 3 social media platforms through to our ticketing platform in 2025. Now, that might not be attainable either if 1,000 seems like a huge number to you. So you'd have to refine these for what works for you. But we can see that's specific and it's measurable, and we've got the timer on there. So that's just a brief overview of SMART goals. These are some examples of some metrics that I would use because I find these the most relevant metrics. Anything engagement related. Engagement overall as a metric is really good because it shows that people are responding to the content you're posting, but you might want to drill down deeper and look at things like shares or look at comments, and then you'd be making content that you would think someone is most likely to share this or to comment on this. Another metric that's really handy are clicks. Now, if you are looking to sell tickets, clicks is probably going to be something that you're interested in. Or if you're doing any kind of paid ads where they're going off to a source, then clicks would definitely be one that you were looking at. Reach, I much prefer to impressions, because with impressions, it's the number of times the content has been seen. And it could be seen by the same 1,000 people 1,000 times, and it would still give you the bigger number, which I now can't do in my head because maths. But reach would show you the individuals who had seen it. So with reach, you'd be able to say there are 1,000 people this has reached. Okay, that's the difference between reach and impressions, and that's why I always prefer reach, because it's more specific. And then if you're doing paid ads, conversion rate is going to be your best friend. So this is the other one that I would definitely factor in if you're doing those. Be sure to choose metrics that you know how to gather and that are easy enough for you to gather. Because if you pick a really difficult metric, you're not going to be motivated to track it, and you probably then won't end up doing it. Okay, so we're going to go on to brand identity. So in this section, we're looking at who are you and what values you stand for, your brand's personality. So what we're going to do, there we go. What we're going to do is we're going to play a quick game at this point, and it's to explain what your brand identity could be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 posts from different organisations in the creative and cultural sector. What I've done is I've removed any of the caption. So their Instagram posts, we're just going to be looking at the visual that they used. okay? And I want you to tell me who you think the organisation is just from this visual, okay? And put it into the chat for me. So first up, who do you think this is? Amazing. People just straight off the bat. It is the Globe. And we know it's the Globe because the Globe has a really strong visual identity. And it's got a strong visual identity because of its building. But this means that the building forms a part of their marketing and of their social media because it's so distinctive. So it's got the theatre in the round. It's something that you see and you automatically know the brand. Do you have a strong brand visual identity? Is there something that stands out about you that you could be using within your social media or within your marketing? Now, it's okay if the answer is no. This is just one of the options, okay? Next up, this one might be a bit harder. And the clue is it's not the RSPB. I know the RSPB are great on TikTok, but it isn't them. This is off of Instagram. Any guesses on this one? There's a couple of people who have got it. It's the Natural History Museum. Now, the Natural History Museum do some nice, fun, silly posts, but they also mix them up with informative and educational posts. And this is an example of a brand personality. So have a think about your personality online. First up, does it differ from in person? Does it differ on the different platforms? And if you aren't sure of your brand personality, this isn't defined anywhere, then the key thing to do is to always think of 3 words that would describe you. So are you fun? Are you informative? Are you serious? Are you thoughtful? If you define those, it can really help with what type of content you're going to be creating and what type of tone of voice you have in your post, but also the visuals in your post. So the third part of a brand identity, this should be an easy one, I think. So it's how to troll the entire world. Step 1, Industrial Revolution. Step 2, there is plastic in my blood. A few guesses going on. Just let a couple more come in. It is the Crab Museum. And this is an example of them having clear brand values, okay? So we know that the Crab Museum are passionate about conservation because they do lots of posts like this. And the other ones that you've mentioned in the chat are also passionate about conservation. So it makes sense. Are you passionate about conservation? Is this one of the key things you stand for? Or are you passionate about accessibility? Do you have a mission to raise awareness of something in particular? All of this is your brand identity and it can help you to form your objectives. Ultimately, in this section, I want you to consider what you want the audience to take away from encounters with you online. Okay? So we're going to move on to resources. And what we're going to look at in this section. So this part is about your team. Who are your team? How many people are working on social media? This is my dream team here. This would be my dream Zoom call to join, just a load of cats. So in your team, what are people responsible for? Do you have one person and they are responsible for everything? Do you have different people responsible for different parts? Is there someone who needs to make the decision at the kind of top of that hierarchy? And say there was a complaint that came in, they would be the one to deal with it. This ties in to a crisis comms plan. And I would really recommend if you work in an organisation in particular, that you have a crisis comms plan and make it before it's too late and you need to be actioning the crisis comms plan. I've written an article on it and Katie is going to pop it into the chat. There we go. It will save you in the long run in case anything happens. Hopefully nothing will and you won't need to use it. But even if it's just a couple of paragraphs on what you would do, who would be involved, it can really help because when you're in the moment, it's all a bit panicky and you're just feeling overwhelmed. So let's get it planned out ahead of time. Okay, realistically, how are your team's resources and capacity? How big is your team? Are they full-time staff? Is social media actually just a part of someone's job and they're doing 10 other things? So we want to define this in this section because we want the rest of it to take into consideration the fact that there are these resources available, okay? And then do you have any budgets for paid social or for outsourcing any work? So we want to make sure our goals are realistic in line with this. Okay, next section, audience targeting. So in this, we're going to be looking at our audiences, who we want to be targeting. Is your audience different in person to on social media? Who do you want your audience to be? Are there audiences you want to grow in particular? So you might want to think about your audience's location, particularly if you're a venue, age, maybe their gender, their interests, their career, their lifestyle, their level of income. Think about what they want as well. So are they looking for entertainment? Are they looking for information about their passion or their hobbies? Are they just looking to explore the local area? If you don't know your existing audience, so if you're listening to this and thinking, I haven't got a clue what they want, one thing you can start with is looking at your ideal audience instead, because you don't have to be targeting who's currently following you. We can aim for an aspirational audience and we can try to get more of them following you. Then think about, what do you want your different audiences to do? Now, bear in mind, some of your audience on social media, if you're a venue, they are never coming in the door. Or if you're a musician, they are never coming to one of your gigs. But that doesn't mean that they aren't a valuable audience member on social media, because they can still be really supportive on there. So it's something to consider. You're going to have this only online social audience. Okay, I know a chart is always having to look at one of these, but do you have any audience data or demographics? If you do, you're going to pop it into that research document we were talking about. Okay, so you might get this. This is a screenshot from Facebook Insights, but you might have some data from a third-party tool if you're using one like Hootsuite, for instance. You might have some data just from the platforms themselves. We're going to put all of that research into this document just so you have it to hand. With this, these stats show who follows you. And like I was saying just now, you might be aiming for an audience that don't currently follow you. So looking at this, you would say our audience is 57% women. Now, that doesn't mean that you only aim for women. If you're thinking, well, we're on a mission to actually get more men coming in the door, then maybe you're going to be tailoring your posts towards men and trying to grow that audience. Okay, so the data is just a kind of starting off point. Now, if with this whole section, you're thinking, I don't know anything about my audience whatsoever beyond social media, I don't know who's coming along to exhibitions or to shows or whatever it might be, then you might want to think about talking to Jack from Digital Culture Network. He can help you with surveying your audiences. And this is bigger than social media. This is going to be surveying people who are coming along to events, or surveying people who have subscribed to your newsletter, or whatever it might be. But that's an option if you're listening to this and thinking, I don't know anything about my audience. Okay, next we have got choice of platforms. For this section, we're going to be looking at where you're posting. Okay, think about the different audiences that you've just identified. Different platforms have different primary audiences on them, and this is going to influence where you're investing your efforts. So Facebook is very good for families. It's great for older people. And I love older people on Facebook because they comment a lot. And when they comment, Facebook thinks this is a valuable post and it shows it to more people. So they can be a really good audience to engage with. And very hyper-local, the Facebook audience, becoming more so with new features that are added. So if you're a venue or you're someone who needs people to be coming along to shows, then this might be a good platform for you to be using. Next up, we've got LinkedIn. No surprises here. Really good for organizations, really good for professionals. It's done quite well out of a lot of the X fallout, and it has grown recently. Instagram, we've got good platform for younger people, artists, organizations, and specific diverse communities. And by that, it could be any type of community. So you get a lot of fan bases on Instagram. So if you've got, say, a show about Harry Styles, Instagram is going to have a fan base for Harry Styles on it, for instance. Or it might be that you are a dance group that works particularly with neurodivergent people. You're going to have clusters of people on there who are using the same neurodivergent artist hashtags, who are just willing to engage and chat about that. So it's quite good for these little pockets of communities. Then we've got X. Still got quite a lot of organisations and professionals on there, and it's still the biggest platform for journalists. So it still has its reputation as being the live news feed, which means you get more journalists there than on any other platform. With X, and this has been quite a long running thing, it isn't new, the audience slightly skews towards men. So that's something to consider, and in particular older men. So if you have an older male audience, maybe this is a platform you want to look at. Threads, younger people, again, skews towards men. Very similar audiences to Instagram, which makes sense because it's the sister platform of Instagram, and also X, because it's a similar type of platform. It's leading with the text-based focus. And then TikTok, younger people, artists, but it is worth mentioning that the current biggest audience that's growing is the 35 plus audience. So don't count it out as only being for younger people. Okay, so along with audiences, there's some other things I want you to think about when you're picking your platforms. So first up, what have you got to post? If you've got really few opportunities for any kind of video content, then it's not going to make sense for you to go for TikTok, for instance. Which platforms are currently working well for you? Which ones do you like? And which ones are you comfortable using? Because that can go quite a long way, actually. If you're more willing to spend time on the platform, engaging with people, your posts are going to do better. Things have changed on social media, and you're no longer expected to be on every single platform. So I really want you to have a think about whether there's a platform that you want to drop, because you would be better off investing your time and efforts into a few platforms really well than being on 8 platforms and just posting sporadically when you think of it and it's the same content. I would much prefer to chat with people who are saying, do you know what, we're dropping that, it doesn't work for us, we're going to just focus in on these 3. Okay, I know that's a difficult message to take if you've got a manager who's saying, wait, we need to be everywhere. We've always been everywhere. Okay. The other thing is, if you decide to introduce a new platform, then you're going to need to explain in here who the audience are for it and where you're getting the capacity to take it on. So that might mean dropping another platform. Okay. Right, over to competitor analysis. So what are we putting into this section? Now, when I say competitors, I don't necessarily mean competition. And this is always something when I talk to people in the creative and cultural sector, they'll say, well, we don't really have competitors. What I mean by competitor analysis is other organisations or artists who are similar to you, who you would like to benchmark yourself against. So checking in on what others are doing can be really helpful for your strategy, because you can look at which platforms they're using, what kind of engagement they're getting, what do you think they're doing really well, what do you think isn't working for them, what kind of content are they posting, how often are they posting. All of this is a competitor analysis, and then you can use this information to inform what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing it can just be a couple of things you've picked out. So you say, this organisation is quite like us, and I really like what they're doing here, so we're going to try something similar. And that is your competitor analysis for this strategy. What's working well for them could help to inform your content. So I've got some examples here. So we've got, on the left, we've got the Foundling Museum. And looking through their account, I've noticed whenever they share an artifact, which in their case is usually a token given from mum to the child when they're leaving them there, it does really well on Facebook. So if you're a similar organisation, you might be thinking, okay, we could share individual artifacts in this way, where it's got like nothing in the background. It's really focused in on what the artifact is. In the middle, we've got the British Library, and they're very good on X at doing storytelling. So they'll like link together their storytelling through a thread on X. I know it's confusing, but threads named themselves the same thing as a function of X. But they're really good at doing this type of storytelling. And maybe you've got something at your organisation that you could talk about in that kind of long form way by threading together these posts. And then on the right hand side, we have got the South Bank Centre, and they did this great video, which is jumping onto current trends. So we've got, well, I say current, they were in the summer, they were current trends. So the brat summer trend and the demure trend. Now, it could be looking at this that you think, okay, I reckon we could use trends in a similar way. Or it might be that you look at the content of the video, which is predominantly photo based with music, and you think we could do something with that. So we don't have lots of our own footage, but we could do something where we use photos and the music in a similar way. So in this section, all we're basically doing is identifying a few competitors and saying what we've learned from them and what we're going to be using taking forward. Okay. What goes into the posting frequency section? So despite the title here, I actually want you to think bigger than posting frequency in the first place. I want you to think about all of the time that's needed for social media. So if there's planning time required, if you need training on a particular platform, then very importantly, how often are you going to be engaging with your audience? How often are you going to be going on and responding or monitoring comments? How often are you going to be looking at what others are posting and talking to them? So identify that, and then identify how often you're expecting to post to each platform. So for instance, we're going to be doing 2 posts per week to Facebook. You don't have to be posting every day to every channel. If you've got capacity to do that, great. It's a great way to grow, but it's probably unrealistic to expect that you're going to be able to do that. So try to be realistic in line with your resources as to how often you're expecting to be posting. Okay, this is a little section, but it's really important. This is your content calendar. So think about your seasonal schedule. Do you have a calendar of your key dates and events when projects are taking place and when you'll be making announcements and things like that? I would recommend that you do have a content calendar, particularly if you're in a team or if you're part of an organisation, because it's going to help everyone to see all of the work that's going on to it. If you don't have a content calendar and there's no way you can create one, don't let this put you off making a strategy, because in this section you could always do a paragraph that just explains, I'm going to be touring during this time. These are the key dates of my shows, for instance. But ideally, if you're going to have a content calendar, and Katie will pop the link for an article I've written on how to create a social media content calendar into the chat. So ideally you'll have one, and this you'll be linking out to from this point. So it's just for everybody to see what's going on. It's really handy for planning your posts and for seeing when you've overcommitted. So you might look at the month of November and think, I've said I'm going to do a lot of stuff during that time, and actually I've got loads of other work going on. How can I spread it out a bit? Or you might look at it and you might think, right, my content pillars, and we'll come on to content pillars in a sec, but looking at my content pillars on there, I'm not using one of them at all. And then you'll try to bring that in. If you don't have a calendar, like I say, just pop something in so that you know the key dates. Okay, content plans. This is probably the biggest section. It's going to take you a few paragraphs in this section to outline what you're doing. And hold on to content pillars. I'm coming on to it. Okay. So what content are you going to post? Come up with content that relates to your goals and objectives. So if you're looking to raise awareness on a topic, for instance, you're going to be posting about it. If you're looking to talk about your love of a particular art form, that's going to form a big part of what you're posting about. When you're planning your content, you're going to want to include a lot of different types of content, because different types will work well on different platforms, and all of the platforms like a little bit of variety. So we're thinking beyond just videos and images. We're thinking of things like polls. So there's an example of a poll here that I just adored by Ipswich Museums, where they do a creepy doll battle on Instagram. And my vote is for Marianne, because she looks absolutely horrendous, like she'll be underneath your bed at night. But other types might be infographics. You might use testimonials from people. You might use user-generated content where people are sharing what they're doing at your library workshop, for instance, and then you're going to be repurposing that. So try and think a bit bigger than just images, videos. Now, one of the things you might want to define in this is that you're going to be using these different types of content on different platforms. So for instance, you might say, on Instagram, we're going to ask for user-generated content, and we're going to be sharing that to our stories. And you might say, on LinkedIn, we're going to be using testimonials from people, and we're going to be making them into graphics, or we're going to be using the text in our posts. Okay, and then maybe tagging in the person. Defining this in your strategy is going to help you to prepare for what you need. Particularly if you're looking at making loads of video content, it's going to give you that heads up and having that in mind. The other thing to think about is, are you going to be making lots of evergreen content, or, and it doesn't have to be or, it could be and or, lots of trending content. So evergreen content you can reuse basically any time, because it's content that is probably very relevant to you. It might be if you're a venue and you're a real historic venue, then maybe some of your evergreen content is going to be about your history. It's going to be about the building. Trending content is responsive to what else is happening on social media. And it might be that it's responding to current trends, or it might be that you're responding to the news, for instance, with your content. So thinking about how much trending content you can do and how much of it's going to be evergreen. Now, one last bit on this. Some of you have to share lots of content from others, and I'm particularly thinking about things like libraries. You often have to share content from the council, from the other libraries that are in your area. What I would like you to do in this section is to identify your content ratio. And that means for every 3 posts we share, we are going to do 2 of our own posts. Or that means every post I share, I'm going to do 1 of my own posts. It's trying to make it that you're not just like a bulletin board, that you're actually putting out your own content as well. And it can be quite hard if you've got lots of sharing that you have to do. So if you haven't got a clue about any of the content that you want to put out, and you're thinking, what am I going to put in this section then? You might want to have a look at your content pillars. So probably have heard of content pillars before. They've been around for quite a long time in marketing. It's basically a theme or a topic that you definitely want to include in your content. And they might revolve around things like your values, your priorities, what you're passionate about. I popped in some examples. These are certainly not the only content pillars that are out there. These are different for everybody. But some examples might be, realistically, if you are a theatre and you have touring groups, probably one of your content pillars is going to be tickets and shows. You have to be posting about that. If you're a historic venue, like I was saying, maybe you're going to be talking about the history of the building. Maybe it's going to be advocacy around something like education. Maybe it will be your community partnerships or the love of a particular topic. So this can be helpful if you're not sure where to start with your content, to define these. And then when you look at your calendar, you can say, okay, we haven't spoken about advocacy for the entire month of October. We need to do some posts around that. Okay, last section. This is looking at your reporting and your data, evidence and insights. Now, it looks like we're done. We're moving on to the next section, but this is how you measure your success, this section. So, how are we going to see what's working in our strategy and what isn't? Now, as a bare minimum, we're going to look at your top performing content, what isn't working, and the metrics that you've defined. So you should track whichever metrics you've mentioned in your goals, and you're going to want to look at what's worked well, what hasn't worked well. In this part of the strategy, I want you to include an indicator of how often you're going to be looking at your performance and measuring and reporting, and maybe who you're reporting to, if that's not something that's very clear. This is a hideous way to end a presentation. I'm sorry. This is a screenshot from Facebook Insights. And I know that charts like this are overwhelming when you first see them. Don't worry. It's just here for visual purposes as to what it looks like. I would, like, if this is the only takeaway that you take from this, I would very strongly advise you not to wait until the end of the year and then to do your reporting on the entire year that's passed. If that's all you take from this, I'm happy, because it is the worst way of doing it. You will get to the end of the year, you will start to make your strategy, your report. You will look and you will be like, I can't get loads of this data because all of the platforms have changed their insights. And also I'm now in the midst of like a ton of data. Please try to report as you go. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be like half a page where you say, in October, this type of post did really well. We saw really bad performance on this content pillar. We're thinking about changing the content pillar, because that's the other thing. You can, if you're reporting as you go, you can adjust your strategy and say, this isn't working anymore. We're going to change it, and not wait until, April 2025 to do it. You might want to invest in a platform where you can get some of these analytics. I wouldn't suggest one over the others. They all come with strengths and weaknesses, and you need to have the budget to do it. You might be able to just use the on-platform insights, but to be honest with you, they're getting worse and worse over the years, and it's harder to pull the data off that you want. So it might be a case of just looking at the metrics in particular that you're after, and then looking at post performance. Now, reporting on data, using analytics, it can be a bit overwhelming, and there is someone on the team who's a specialist in this. So James is our data analytics and insights tech champion, and you can book in for a chat with him, and it can be about your social media. The other thing is that, as a little, like, between you and me, James is currently writing an article on social media analytics. So if you want to make sure that you receive that article in your inbox, make sure you sign up to our newsletter, because it will be included in the newsletter, and Katie will pop the link for the newsletter in there as well. There we go. Okay, right, quick, we need to get on to the Q&A, because I'm sure you've got lots of questions. So before we do, you're going to get an email, and it's going to have a recording of this, and it's going to have the template in it and all of the links that have been mentioned. If there are questions I can't answer in the Q&A because of time, then I will answer those as well, and you'll get that with the email. please can you complete the webinar satisfaction survey that's going to come round after this. I'd be really grateful because it lets us know how you found the session. And there are 2 webinars coming up that you might want to book onto. One is really important if you're a non-profit, because it's for ad grants, and that can be super handy. It's basically like free money to spend on Google Ads. The other one is about your ticketing journey. So if you're doing tickets, please come along to those. And Katie will pop them into the chat. And then we're going over to the Q&A. So if you're able to still stick around, I would love to answer some questions, Katie.
Well done, Nicola. That was amazing, really informative. And there's a lot of love in the chat as well, which has been really nice. We've got lots of questions and we've got about 8 minutes. So I will go through some of the most popular ones. We've had some upvotes as well. So thank you for those. So top of the shop is from Anna. I would be interested to hear your opinion on hashtags and if you feel they are still relevant. Thank you.
So it depends on your platform. If you're using them on Instagram, very, very relevant, and I'll explain why. If you're using them on a platform like LinkedIn, LinkedIn tends to have the intelligence now to read the keywords within your post, and you don't really need to worry about hashtags on there unless it's for a specific event or topic. So say you have a festival that you're promoting, you know, your festival, then you'll probably use a hashtag for that because you want everybody to use the same hashtag. If it's just like social media marketing, you won't need it. Now on Instagram, really important, because the algorithm is, one of the things it's doing is it's reading your keywords. And if you can't find a way to get that phrase into your caption, pop it in as a hashtag. Instagram does a lot of matching up by keywords. So it will say they've engaged with this post and it has these keywords. They might like this post. It's one of the main things it's doing. And hashtags are really handy for that.
Lovely, thank you. Next one is from Damien. It is about X stroke Twitter. Damien says X and Twitter is dying in terms of engagement. Who's already jumping ship and the types of conversations that are happening there? Should we still be there? Should we start looking at new alternatives like Blue Sky? The Merle, I think the Museum of English Rural Life, already has nearly 10,000 followers there.
So Blue Sky's had a bit of a bump recently, which I'm really happy about because I quite like Blue Sky. In answer to the question of whether you should stay or go on X, it really depends on a few things. It depends on whether you're getting engagement, and the fact that you say you're not, for me, would be a red flag to continue on there, because I'd be thinking, is it worth you investing the time into those posts, or could you be posting somewhere else and making more use of that time? It depends on, for some people, it's been their organization's kind of ethics, where they've looked at them and said, this isn't the platform for us anymore. It will depend on your audience as well. Now, if you're a venue where you're trying to speak to the public, it may not be the right platform for you anymore, because a lot of what people are using it for is to speak to the sector and to speak to the press. And it does still seem to hold value in that way. But it might be that it's just not for you. What I would do is I would make an argument for no longer using it. If you think that this is the right approach, I obviously wouldn't tell you, go ahead and do that. But what you could do is you could look at the data and you could say, so on Instagram, for instance, we're getting this number of engagements. On X, we're getting this. And maybe it would be a case of reducing your time on it to begin with and seeing whether it is having a big impact on the engagement. And if you decide to drop it, in all honesty, as long as you're happy with the platforms that are working for you, I don't think there's a problem with dropping any of these platforms. You just need to be able to justify it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. There's a lot of people in the chat saying that they have left or that they've got quite a lot of followers still on X, so it's a mixed bag there for sure. Thank you for that. Let's see. Another one about Twitter really quickly. How are people navigating Twitter analytics and goal setting now the data is being hidden behind subscriptions? That's from Francis.
So this is a really tricky one because unless you're paying for it, you're not going to be able to see some of these metrics. And in that case, I would recommend that all you use X for in terms of the reporting is looking at top performers from an objective point of view, where you've said, okay, this appears to have done well this month. Take a screenshot of it, pop it in that research document. You're not going to be able to drill down into the data because it is all behind a firewall, basically, a paywall. It does mean that you're going to have to leave those stats out when you're talking about things like reach across platforms, because realistically, you're not going to know. It's a pain. I'm not sure there's a solution to it at the moment.
Lovely, thank you. Loads of questions flooding in. We've got 3 minutes, so we might do some quick fire ones if that's okay with you, Nicola. So from Ruth, once you've created a plan, how regularly would you recommend relooking at it? Once a year or more?
More. I would recommend probably once a quarter, at least. Ideally, when you look at your once a month report, you'll say, this is working really well. We're going to do a bit more of that. I might tweak the strategy, but at least look at it once a quarter. And if there's something on there that you think, oh, we haven't done that, I hate it, I don't want to do it, take it off.
Absolutely. Lovely, thank you. A one from TikTok from Crying Out Loud. Is it still correct that TikTok is trend driven? That is, organizations will see something on TikTok and jump on that trend with their own content.
It often is. It's not all there is. So I know you are a big fan of the Royal Armouries.
I am. Yeah.
And theirs is not trend driven, is it? It's evergreen.
Yeah, 100%. They're really furrowing their own path with that one. I recommend you have a look at it.
And there are several others in the sector who are doing the same as well. So you don't have to do trends. You can just go for the content you want on there and kind of use it as a bit of an experiment. I think if you've got capacity to do it, it can be quite good for getting some video that you then might want to use on your other platforms as well.
Yeah, agreed. Another quick one from Anna. Please explain in more details what conversion rate means. Thank you.
Conversion rate is basically whatever activity you wanted them to do. So say you were making an ad about driving traffic, then the activity you want them to do is to click onto the web page, or maybe it's to view the web page. So you would look at the number of people who did that versus the number of people who it was shown to, and that will give you your conversion rate.
Lovely, thank you very
help
much.
With that. I know that's a bit on info. We can help with that if it's something you want to look at more.
We can indeed. Let's do one more quick one from Wendy. Can your content be similar? I write up events for a country local authority. What's going on for Halloween? So is it okay to promote the same content on different platforms?
It's fine to use the same content on different platforms. My caveat is always, is it right for that platform? Are the audience on that platform? Because sometimes what you'll want to do is you just want to tweak it a little bit. So you'll say, we're talking about the country fair, and on Facebook we're going to show like a nice family picture, and we're going to focus on these elements. And on Instagram we're going to show a young couple out for the day in the image, and we're going to talk about these elements. So it's absolutely fine to use the same content. It just needs to make sense for the audience and for the platform. And you might just want to tweak a couple of little bits, like not mention face painting on Instagram, for instance.
And I think that's all we have time for.
I will have a look at these questions and attempt to answer. I don't know how many I'm committing myself to answering here, and answer them for the email as well that we send around.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming. Please do fill out the survey for me. That would be super helpful. I hope that the template is useful. If you look at it and you think, I wanted to do, I don't know, situational analysis, then get in touch and we can look at that. You don't have to just have what's in there. We can add a few bits in. But have a good rest of your week. Bye all.